Hello and welcome to CHRO Club. Today I'm joined by Judhajit. He's a CHRO of ICICI Prudential Life Insurance. Hello Judhajit, great to have you here.
Hello Pooja, and warm welcome to ICICI Prudential. Thrilled that you are here with us today.
So, I'd like to start with asking you that there are multiple aspects of HR function. And one aspect clearly that has really stood out post-pandemic is HR's role in business. So what factors do you think predominantly has made HR's role in business more active today? Is it technology or there are other factors involved?
No, so I think, the whole aspect of people management, what we call human resources, has evolved over the last 100 years. It started 100 years back with welfare, when, with the industrial revolution, factories came up. So you needed to take care of workers' welfare. So from those origins, then it moved into what we call personal management, which was more about, recruitment, training, different functional aspects of HR. And then there was a movement in the 70s and 80s on what we call human resources development, which was less to do with managing people through systems process, but also look at the human being as a person who can be developed and the growth of the individual, because people come to work through the combination of financial capital and what we call human capital. We are creating value for the customer, which results in economic surplus or profit. The question always is about who gets what value. If you give too much value to the customer, there is no profit or no salaries to be paid. If you give too much of profits to the shareholder, the customer doesn't get value or employees don't get value. So there is always this bit of tussle between how the value or the surplus should be shared. And if businesses are not making money or profit or surplus, then who takes the hit? Because you cannot really start reducing employee wages, right? So you don't give them increments. So it also depends on the relative progress of the industry. If the industry is a growth sector, there is more money to pay because more capital is coming in. So new sectors always are very popular with employees, because that's where the maximum amount of capital is flowing in. That's where the growth is highest. So when growth happens, capital comes in. Employees also command premiums in terms of salaries, especially because they're bringing in those skill sets, and those skill sets are less in demand. The pandemic, I would say that what it reaffirmed really is people are central to business performance. Because at the end of the day, people realize that if people are not there, there is no business. So you can't have money. Financial capital is not enough. It just brought that whole aspect starkly. So people also realize that this is the right time. So well-meaning companies, progressive companies took a lot of initiatives to look at the overall well-being of the employee. And that not just is the physical well-being, because you have to keep them safe, but it also expanded towards looking at mental well-being and overall holistic well-being, so to speak. So I think that is something that was there also maybe 40, 50 years back. And again, it came back. So I won't say that the pandemic is only the trigger. I think it just brought a refocus rather than it wasn't as if it wasn't there. Probably when there's a lot of growth, you start feeling that growth is happening despite people. But I think the pandemic made us all realize, people are a very vital part of the whole equation. And therefore, we have to take care of our people if we have to be competitive in the long run.
So, when we talk about people are central to business, so how technology is enabling people decisions? Like, if you use AI and you are using you're mining data, using algorithms, so you can make better business decisions. So where in this curve is ICICI Pru at this moment in using AI for people analytics?
So I'm a bit of a skeptic, and I'm going to give you a bit of a contrarian answer here. Because, I also handle operations customer service, and part of my job I spend on looking at customer experience and customer journeys, as we call it. What has happened really is with the evolution of the digital ecosystem. So there is a lot of stuff that's happened on the customer side in terms of how we mine customer data, because the moment you have a digital footprint of the customer, you also know how the customer is behaving online. You can use the data to do what is called predictive analytics to suggest offers to customers. In the customer side, you have zillions and zillions gigabytes of data, which can amenable to data mining and data analytics. On the employee side, I think this whole piece is a bit overrated at this point in time for the simple reason, employees are, you don't have data at scale, and employees are set. In a business like ours, distributed, we have 500 offices. There are employees in different parts of the country. So it's not to say that we don't have data. So obviously we use data to zone in on which employees are doing well, in what parameters, where they need support. So for assessment, for training, we have better data. We are also having data because we are seeing a lot more employees migrating to digital learning platforms. So if I were to say pre-pandemic, to me the biggest use case has been so far, pre-pandemic, most people would not do digital learning. It was very difficult to get people to e-learning programs or digital learning programs. Today, a lot of the learning is happening online. So when you're happening online, now you have data about who's logging in, who's seeing how many pages, how much time they're spending on the learning programs. So that amount of data you can then use to give nudges to people, right? In terms of how they should, what kind of courses they should do, or, give them a nudge if they're not open their, the program that they're supposed to complete, reminder. So that is something that is a big use case, I feel. Two big developments that have happened on the tech side is really on the digital learning piece, and the other piece is the way we work. That kind of thing is a very new phenomena. So what that has made very interesting is that people have learned how to collaborate and work together in a hybrid model. So the tech part of it, I would say, is more in terms of how we are using tech to work and collaborate with each other, right? And we have access to both physical and hybrid and also virtual if there need be. So that flexibility is very valuable. The flexibility of learning in a physical environment, the flexibility of learning in a hybrid environment, the flexibility of learning in a digital environment is also very valuable. But the larger point I think we were trying to get at is tech helping us mine employee data much more to be able to do make people more productive. Well, it's too early days yet. That is my sense. So tech, to come back to that answer, is tech making us more productive? That answer is not clear. Is tech giving us more flexibility to be more productive? Yes, that is definitely the case. The physical world will definitely coexist. Like online shopping will also exist with offline shopping. Online meetings will also exist with offline meetings. So I don't think we have to swing to either extreme. The good part of it is that we have now the flexibility to decide where and how to use tech. And I think where the challenge is for organizations is how to use tech smartly to be productive, because tech also brings in, because if it makes too easy, like I said, like the email thing, right, you may be wasting a lot of time clearing junk email, which has no value to your life.
This idea has been really growing, the CX is equal to EX. And you're the best person to talk about it since you are, you see both the worlds. So as we improve experience of the employee life cycle from, let's say, candidate to alumni, what would be those 2 to 3 points, which initiatives that you've rolled out at ICICI Pro that helps to, develop a talent-centric culture that speaks volume about your mission, vision, and purpose, aligns individual action to overall business goal? So if you can just share 2 to 3 points specifically from your organization.
So you're right. The way we think about it is, firstly and foremost, people are central to strategy execution. So the leadership team has the responsibility to evolve the business strategy, and that's blessed by the board, of course. Now the execution of the strategy is pivotal, and who executes strategy? It's people. Now aligning people to the purpose, values, vision, goals of the organization is what HR does through its various processes, systems, So communicating the vision, communicating what are the expectations from employees in terms of values, what are the leadership behaviors that we want. So the communication forums become very important. Your performance management process, which cascades what goals have to be done, what your role is supposed to be, the training piece, and then finally the assessment piece. All of this is done through systems and processes, and HR manages these systems and processes. So that's one part of it. So fundamentally, if you step back and say, hey, So how do we make sure that we are a talent-centric company, right? Of course, the first thing, we like to use what we call the 3C framework. We say, do we have the right people in the right number at the right time? We call that capacity. The second part is capability. So do we have the people with the right skills for the present and for the future? And how are we ensuring that we have systems and processes to take care of that through? And for us, capability building is not just training, it's also job rotation, it's about giving internal growth. And the third piece, we call it the culture piece and the communication piece, because ultimately that's the intangible that holds everything together. Now, in an organization, things are always changing, right? The sector is changing, the economic environment is changing, technology is changing, customer preferences are changing. So as an organization, you have to keep evolving. The question we have to ask is, why should an employee even work here? Why should he even come and work with me? And that's what we mean by the employee value proposition. So where we have defined it is that fairness and meritocracy, offering people learning and growth, and what we call providing a supportive environment. Now, so what the organization expects from employees and what the employees expect from organizations are congruent, right? That is when the organization truly becomes talent-centric. Because if these are not congruent, you're never going to accomplish it. So let me spend some couple of quick minutes on the employee value proposition. So the three things in my sense, I would say, is alignment to what the organization goals, objectives, vision, purpose is a very important part of creating a talent-centric organization, because then you're harnessing the potential of people. But that's what I expect from people. Other part is what employees expect from me. So am I delivering that, which is the employee value proposition, right? And here I want to spend a couple of minutes on this is the fairness and meritocracy for us is very important, because the reason why people don't give their best according to us is that people perceive that organizations are unfair. The reason why people quit an organization, the most important reason, of course, there are many reasons why people quit, but one of the biggest reasons that create dissonance is perceived unfairness, as we call it. So the only way you create perceptions of fairness and reinforce perceptions of fairness is if there are systems and processes, and the system is the overarching. Learning and growth, that's also fundamental, because why do people come to work? Because they want to grow themselves, they want to grow in their careers, they want to make more money. So how do you grow in your career and make more money? Only when you have more skills. So as an organization, I have to give you more challenging assignments. I have to make sure that I am always giving you assignments which challenge you and help you grow. And that's the role that organizations have to do. So learning and growth becomes an important proposition. A third proposition we have is providing a supportive environment.
That was very interesting. And I like the way you described how you're being supportive, because, everybody says that they're supportive, but it was good to, get that example. So clearly India has a huge demographic diversity. And I think the next growth is going to come from the, demographics for the organization as well as the economy as such. So how are you creating a DE&I agenda in your organization to tap into the demographic dividend?
So I think there are two parts to the DE&I agenda. One is, of course, that ultimately the fundamental basis is that you want to be a meritocracy. Meritocracy is where people, irrespective of gender, caste, creed, whatever else, thrive, and organization rewards people on merit alone, right? So right now we have a unique situation where many women opt out of work because social structures and infrastructure is not there to help them during making those transitions for the various life stage needs. And getting them back at work becomes a challenge given their balancing their personal and their professional commitments. So to that extent, what we've realized is this is not a problem at entry level. So when you go and hire at campuses, say for graduate colleges, it's almost 50-50. But the moment you go into, say, and that's changing now, I must say. If you go to engineering colleges, for example, we are not hiding from engineering colleges. You'll find, though, the proportion of women is increasing, but it's still more male-dominated, right? Even MBA colleges, if you look at the proportion of men and women are also improving. So the point I'd like to make here is that since as a corporates, we hire from academic institutions, fundamentally, academia has to also represent that diversity. To be, for an organization to also be able to provide that, make that diversity, replicate the diversity in their organizations. Because if I have 80% men in a MBA school, I can't hire 80% women or 50% women, because the pool of women in the MBA school is also less, right? So that's one point I wanted to land. Now, the second part of it is that this is not a problem at the entry level. You have a large number of women coming in for frontline jobs, customer service, and customer facing jobs, because those are the biggest jobs, right? Most of the employment that's getting created in India is customer facing roles. So whether it's retail, whether it's sales, whether it's call center or any kind of customer service. The only point I want to make here is, I think as a country, we have a large, and I really believe that there is the huge power of our youth. But somewhere we need to inculcate that no job is a bad job or a good job, right? And because bulk of the employment that's getting created are in customer facing roles, especially in the services sector. We find that a lot of women employees do quit work and they don't come back to work. So there is also now an effort towards what we call second careers or getting people back at work. Now, this has to be done more actively. This has to be done, and this transition back to work has to be done, managed in a different manner than probably the way we are managing, to encourage more and more people to return to work, because you do need time out. Energy is important, but at the same time, the maturity is also important. And a good blend of maturity and energy is what organizations need, because service situations particularly need maturity, right? So I think that's a big opportunity in the services sector for transitioning people back to work once their personal commitments are largely stabilized and they can be, leveraged, because there is a huge population of women who are getting trained, getting educated, but we are not able to tap into that as well. So I think that's a big opportunity for us, of course.
So, lastly, I'd like to ask you, and today ESG has become a mandate for most organizations, and there is a push to report your ESG numbers, to make sure that it is a board, it's an agenda for the board, and it's actually carried in the spirit of, what the ESG requires. So how are you designing the ESG engine at ICICI Pro?
Right. So I think ESG is obviously a new buzzword, but the core ethos of ESG is sustainability. And I think I must say that, there are many exemplars of organizations in India which have always tried to do things sustainably the right way, taking care of communities, taking care of employees, taking care of course, profits and shareholders and customers as well, right? So ESG only reinforces that, makes it a bit more amenable to measurement and reporting and disclosures. So what we are doing is, of course, so if I were to look at the way, it's a framework, and then how do you adopt that framework or parts of the framework that are relevant to you, and make sure it's that you are having initiatives to support each of these. Now, so let's take governance as an example. Today, every listed company and under scrutiny, you have to, it's expected that good governance is a hygiene part of your expectation. Now, can you do better and better there? More disclosures, more transparency. These are, of course, areas where organizations are working on, and the SEBI's related BRSR document is obviously a way forward in that.
And being in BFSI, you would of course have more.
And we are regulated entities,
place,
right?
Yeah.
We are regulated entities, and therefore there is also a demand from regulators on us for transparency and disclosures and all that. Now, the environment part of it is where it attracts a lot of attention because of the whole climate change issue, and rightfully so, because of course, ultimately their planet has to exist for future generations. But services sector like ours are not really pollutants. Correct, the way.
Yeah. You don't have those kind of impetus like manufacturing industry.
Right. So to that extent, the awareness, and I think the new generation of young employees that are coming, they're also looking at more sustainable way of living, sustainable way of working. It's becoming more popular, right? And development is also happening, like green energy and, use of, air conditioning, which is more energy saving, electric vehicles. All of this will help that transition to happen. And organizations have a role to play in encouraging that. So if you look at paper consumption, has gone down dramatically. That has, of course, helped the felling of trees. But more computer consumption or data consumption means more servers and more electricity.
Yeah, there is electronic wastage.
There is electronic waste, so that we have to manage.
Yeah.
You have to also make sure that you're getting access to green energy and not thermal energy necessarily over a period of time. And that transition plan, I think the government and the world over, everybody's talking about how to make sure that we become more renewable energy. And so that is also happening. The S part of it is doing all the right things for customers, employees, and for communities and people. We live in a democratic society. There is always that understanding that as organizations, we have to coexist, and we have to make sure we are relevant for our communities and our customers and for our employees. And I think that drives the ethos and the thinking. I would definitely feel at some level, our accent towards people, communities, and customers is as strong, if not stronger, than most parts of the Western world.
No, it was really wonderful talking to you, and undoubtedly, it looks like you have a robust culture, and the organization is really walking the talk when you say developing internal talent. You having spent 23 years in this brand. So it was great hosting you. Thank you so much for joining us. That's all we have today for the CHRO Club.